Well, there we go. There's the notification. And we wait. And we wait. All right. I think we can go ahead.
Hello, all. Welcome to the 31st episode of the Unifying Force. I'm Kat, joined by Gio and David. How is everybody?
Really good, thanks.
Doing super well this morning.
Yeah, a lot happening in the world this week, including D23, where they double down on all the new Disney content coming up lately. Some things we can talk about Star Wars related, such as Tales of the Jedi. This is the first time I've heard of that. They touched on some Lucasfilm stuff for Indiana Jones, which is pretty cool. And they finally publicly released the Andor exclusive sneak peek from the IMAX screenings of Rogue One and let everybody see that. So that was pretty cool. What do you guys think of that special?
Oh, the Andor special was amazing. That's the first time I'd seen that. I was at a con the weekend that Rogue One re-released. So I did not see it in IMAX. So I had not seen that before they dropped it on D+. We watched it before we watched Solo on the watch along Thursday night, and I had seen that there, but amazing. I'm happy.
Yeah, I'm really glad to see they're kind of seeing Tony Gilroy and Diego Luna say the things that I kind of want the creators of Star Wars to say going forward, which is like, we've got the spectacle and tradition, but also it's the character and emphasis on the script. The kind of things that we've all kind of sounded off on as parts we'd like to see given more attention to in future Star Wars shows going forward with what we've had from Disney Plus so far. So they're saying the right things. Let's hope they've been doing the right things behind the scenes too.
Yeah, I really liked during that sneak peek how Tony Gilroy just kept mentioning the word real. And he kept intercutting that with footage of just the people as opposed to the spectacle. And it's like, okay, this is going to be more of a really personal story, as well as having all the spectacle and stuff that you expect from Star Wars, of course. But it's like, he was the one, of course, who came in and redid the third act of Rogue One, which many consider to be the best act of that film. And initially, he made what some people thought were disparaging comments, but I think he was just surprised at the disarray that the studio was in at the time. So I'm glad they brought him back, because even the scene they showed of Cassian and Stellan Skarsgård's character meeting for the first time was so good. And it's like like you feel the Empire like breathing down their neck, that they're literally having this engaging conversation going back and forth about it. And it's like, okay, if this is, because that shows something. It's not this that they picked that because, oh, it's the first time these two characters are going to meet. They could have picked any scene out of context and showed it to us. But they picked that scene because, like he says, they're emphasizing how real everything is. This is going to be a personal human conflict type story and not just, whiz bang lightsaber type stuff. Not that that's bad, but it's going to have more of an emphasis on the story. So when you get to the spectacle, you're going to have your emotions going to be heightened even higher than it was before. So this is now quickly becoming my favorite, most anticipated Star Wars show, after previously not really giving it the time of day for quite a long time. And even after watching the Mandalorian trailer, which they just dropped this week as well, it really looked good. The spectacle and stuff, wow, it's really there. But I got a lot more hyped for Andor. So
yeah, definitely. The Mandalorian's always kind of felt like it could be a great silent show as well, just with, Din, Grogu, that's all you need. And now that you've got those two back together, it's kind of like them going on the little serial adventures in the kind of Flash Gordon type adventures that George Lucas imagined Star Wars to always be about. Whereas this, exactly as you're saying, kind of feels like real hard drama, but with consequence and with some stakes, which will make any action and spectacle actually feel like it's hitting harder, because there's meaning behind it, and hopefully there are more characters we can get behind. And the cast looks pretty big as well, which I'm hoping means that everyone's kind of given their fair share, but Cassian's still the main sort of perspective we follow. Because one thing that we've seen some Disney Plus shows do is have the title character be almost the side player in a few episodes. And I'm hoping that this kind of has learned from where that didn't work so well. Book of Boba Fett. um, where yeah, all the chapters are kind of Andor focused, or at least Andor is like the central momentum. But yeah, just the fact that you have the showrunner stressing that it's about the choices and the characters and the personal consequences of what's going on, as much as the big scale, is all kind of thumbs up and kind of green flags to make it something that we should get excited for, and while keeping things in check. Yeah, it definitely looks like it could be a lot of fun and very different to what we've seen from Disney plus Star Wars so far.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed, I think, the back to the scenes, the behind the scenes sections of that preview, even more than the scene we got from the show, is showing how they're really working to make this practical. They're going to locations. They're going to more than one location. We're not just it's a Tatooine set again. Chalk it up. We're moving around. It's going to cover a lot of ground. I want to say if this isn't the first look we got at the fact that they're going to like do a flashback to, I was 6 years old, we're going to do flashbacks and get the beginning there, Cassian's early life as well. We get a lot more of that if we have even seen that in another one before. I love that. I would listen to Diego Luna and Skarsgård like talk just forever, and I think we're going to get a lot of that. We're going to get a lot of the Star Wars, the humanity, the exposition that they've got to give, and then you're going to get the crazy battles and this and that. But yeah, is I'm with you, Gio. I really hope this doesn't completely turn into everybody else other than Cassian. We really want to see that's what we're here for. We want to see that go forth, not just let's make this the Mon Mothma show. Now, don't get me wrong, I want to see Mon Mothma because I know that Mon Mothma is an important part of. Oh, looky there.
I think this
Let's
is
count up the
emphasizing
heads.
that this will definitely be the Cassian Andor focus show.
I mean, that's what what it looks like. And then you see, Skarsgård and there's
That's beautiful.
whatever his character name is, and then Mon Mothma second. Who is that? The third largest there in the middle?
I don't know. It looks like a new character, and then you see
Yeah.
Forrest Whitaker with a questionable haircut.
Right. Just something to try and make him look younger,
yeah, and then a couple other people, whoever they are. But yeah, so I think it's going to go all in on this character because he was one of the fan favorites from that movie, which is probably why they decided to give him the series.
Yeah, and I think he's got more of an interesting backstory than Jen. Jen, we saw her beginning in Rogue One. We heard hints about her middle with Forrest Whitaker, Saul.
Yeah, Saul Guerrero.
And we heard about that middle, and then we obviously saw her end in Rogue One. Spoiler alert. But I think Cassian, there's going to be a lot of good stuff, I hope, and I want to know. I genuinely want to know how he got to the point that he was in Rogue One.
Yeah, because on the one hand, with Jyn Erso, you could do like an anthology spin-off episode of some. I've always advocated that they should do a Star Wars anthology show at some point, live action, where you just pick a different character from the mythos and just tell one story with them, like her going on some type of heist or something like that. Because that kind of. But you're right. Cassian has a lot more baggage as a character, and therefore a lot more that you can use. And I don't know now that they're going to tell the flashback of when he was 6 years old, if that's an indicator that every time a Star Wars character opens up a mystery that doesn't get solved in the movie, that means it's going to be a series to come along to explain it. But maybe, yeah, we might get the Maz Kanata series soon to explain how she got the lightsaber.
Good. Well, you mentioned Tales earlier. Have you seen the trailer the D23 trailer for Tales?
I kind of skimmed through it a bit because I saw it was playing on some reel I was watching. I'm like, what is this? I'm like, because I saw there was Count Dooku who was younger. There's other people. I'm like, what is this? And I started watching it, and I
For
was
those
so
of you joining,
and I
and for those
cheated
who
because I was
haven't,
so enamored by what this was. I just kind of fast forwarded to the end because like I need to see what the title of this is first, and then I'll go
Oh.
back and watch the rest of the trailer.
well, for those of you joining and for those who haven't watched the whole thing, that's available on the channel now. That's on the Virtual Cantina Network in our trailers playlist, as well as Mando 3. A lot of other things are there, but go check that out. But you were mentioning, I think it looks like Tales might be kind of what you're talking about. It might be little bitty snippets of this.
Mm.
And then that question from Star Wars in that one, because I think it's supposed to drop all at once, and I think it's like a 6-episode deal.
Yeah, it comes
Yeah.
October 26th.
Yeah,
6
and
shorts.
so maybe it will be. I haven't seen, and I can't tell from the trailer yet, and I'm not going to give a lot of spoilers whether the little things that you see are interconnected or not. Or are we going to get this, and then we're going to get that, and then we're going to get that? And I think if we do just get little explanations, expositions of things that we've always wondered about, that'll be great. And that would be a great place if they get enough traction and do a season 2 of that, like a Jen heist story or something. That'd be cool.
Yeah, and even do the Guardians of the Wills, because we were saying last time they're intriguing characters that we just kind of get snippets of, but the concept behind them is interesting as another kind of group that reveres the Force but doesn't necessarily use it the way the Jedi and the Sith do, and the fact that they're kind of custodians and historians. It's a kind of role within the Star Wars galaxy we haven't really seen in any sense before. But there are many analogs to that in the real world. So who is keeping track of what's going on through the history of Star Wars? It's good to have these kind of characters. And they had a good little interplay as well when we were revisiting Rogue One, saying that they're kind of bickering back and forth. Banter is kind of like a little comedic relief sometimes between the more closed off scenes when they're all kind of locked up in Saw Gerrera's cages on Jeddah. So having some little backstory behind, maybe how they became, either how they met or how they came into being Guardians of the Wills, could be interesting. And the kind of format of an anthology or mini series would work really sweetly in that kind of spot. Just giving a little extra without kind of taking away the mystery, because you can still have things that are unexplained and it be a source of agency for characters and the story. We don't need to have all the midichlorians under the microscope unveiled at the same time.
So prediction number 1, let's go ahead and ask for it, is, are we going to see Guardians of the Wills and Andor?
I would say yes, because that's assuming that they're not going to have Vader in this series, which I don't think he will be. And assuming they don't have Inquisitors, which I don't necessarily think they'd have them either. This would be that would be a good way to include the Force in some fashion, because there's still questions of what the Guardians of the Wills even are, because as we know, in the original draft of Star Wars, the Wills were the omnipresent beings who are telling the Star Wars story. But in the movie, it says, oh, well, they're the guardians of the Kyber Crystal Temple. Well, how does the word will apply to that? Like, maybe we'll see more of that. I don't know if they'd get Donnie Yen and Zhang Wang to come back to reprise their roles. It'd be great if they did. But that we could see something from that. I'm not really. So it's kind of. I didn't get any sense in the trailer that they were going to try and include aspects of the Force in the show, but who knows? They might.
Yeah.
I was going to go with no, because I think that's why it could be a potential further thing to revisit later. But then again, to me and to us, I think when we discussed Rogue One, it was one of the more unique aspects of that film, and one of the new ideas it injected into the familiarity that we enjoyed of the kind of different kind of groups banding together and having these kind of independent missions that end up being unified under the rebellion banner. So it could really work well in theme with the story, but just from what we've seen so far, I had the sense that it was going to be more just boots on the ground, kind of spy and soldier focused storylines. But I'd be happily proved wrong, and it'd be a nice surprise if they do sprinkle in some bit of Guardians of the Wills here or there.
So I think I'm going to go with no as well, just because I hope that they don't use this series to start retconning a lot of Rogue One. It did not appear that Cassian really knew Chirrut, recognized, had any concept of who that was when they see each other in Rogue One. So I'm hoping we don't see at least him. And I
didn't know him either.
Right. Is that they did not know each other, that hadn't happened. So hopefully, again, that the series is going to be focused on Cassian. We're not going to get little, okay, this is happening over here, and we've got the Guardians of the Wills over here, and then we'll see Saw Gerrera over here, and then we'll see. No, hopefully this is focused on Cassian, and we won't really have that opportunity to see that, at least in season. Maybe you could start getting a little preview of that in season 2 of Andor, because we've been told that season 2 of Andor goes right up until the moments of Rogue One taking place, and maybe they could fit that in for what was happening with those guys and what they were doing right before Cassian and Jyn get there. But I'm going to go in season 1, no. But having said that, again, I don't think seeing Chirrut, but I just saw one of our members, Bryce, who is in the Star Wars kind of comic books and book Facebook group, posted about High Republic #1. Marvel Comics, they've been doing the High Republic comics for a while, but they've started over. They're going back to #1, is doing a renumbering, because it appears that they've stopped the story that they were telling, and they're going back and they're doing another story from another time of the High Republic. And this one appears that it is going to focus a lot on Jeddah. And if it focuses on the Kyber Temple and those aspects of Jeddah, I cannot see how we will not get a lot of content from the Guardians of the Wills, of the Guardians of that Kyber Temple. So if they're starting to, push that forward in comics, maybe eventually when that fleshes out and we get some High Republic TV show, movie content, we'll see a lot more of them then, at least hoping. So I think that comic drops maybe around the same time as Tales.
That could also be featured in Tales of the Jedi as well, expanding on the Kyber Crystal Temple. Because, Cassian knew who the Guardians were, and he recognized from just looking at Chirrut, probably from his attire, who he was. But yeah, that might make an appearance.
Yeah, I think that's a possibility of, maybe we won't see Chirrut and Baze, but we'll see other Guardians. If he visited Jeddah, since he knew who they were, maybe he will visit Jeddah at other points and other things happen there. Saul was there before. Maybe that's where he interacts with Saul in the series.
Prediction number 2.
Ooh.
I think the whole overarching storyline of the 2 seasons will be uniting all the Rebel cells into the Rebel Alliance. Because in the movie, when they're having the council meeting with Jyn, they're trying to urge him to go to Scarif. They're all already there. They're already formed as like a cohesive group, or somewhat cohesive. They're still arguing a lot with each other about what to do, and nearly disbanded over it. But I got the vibe from that scene they showed with Stellan Skarsgård's character talking with Cassian that, yeah, Cassian's doing stuff and trying to, make a difference or whatever, but he didn't seem to be aware that there's a larger network out there. So maybe I think the storyline for the first two, since we don't have any obvious missing piece of lore that needs to be explored for this series, then maybe it's going to be about uniting the factions into one big, the cohesive Rebel Alliance unit on Yavin 4.
Very interesting. So do you think that it's going to be kind of, I hate to go, like challenge of the week or whatever, like, the A Team or like, Mandalorian did for a little while. Do you think it's going to be Cassian and Skarsgård, they hopefully get together. It looks like they do in the scene that they drop. And then they start visiting, going to, having experiences with all the different rebels, like Saw's cell and
sort of, but I don't think it'll be as episodic, because the fact that they already set the bar for 12 episodes, which is a lot, because even the Mandalorian season 3, I think, is still going to be 8, and it's like, okay, you're stretching the length of the series, and you've already announced you're doing 2 seasons, so I think that sounds more like a long form story. Because something that's episodic, you can come up with a new idea all the time and just keep it going indefinitely, regardless of how small the timeline is between the series and the next, in this case, the Rogue One movie.
Right.
The fact that they set it at 12 episodes in just 2 seasons tells me that this is probably more of a long form storyline and might not be as episodic. I mean, there'll be a little bit of episodic because that's kind of tradition Star Wars, but I think for the most part, it's not going to be, adventure of the week like you got with Mandalorian.
Yeah. Well, and I'm not saying that it's like a bad thing, is that it be episodic. That's what
Right.
George set this out to be. He set this to be a movie serial like Flash Gordon is. That's Star Wars from the beginning. That was what this was supposed to always be.
Right, but even in those serials, like each one would start with like an opening crawl where they would catch up people who haven't seen it before, and they'd only mention the few basics that they need to know to orient themselves with the scene. But each episode, it was still kind of long form. But it kind of like the old Adam West, Burt Ward Batman series. Every episode was like a 2-parter where the first half ends with Batman and Robin in dangerous, perilous situation. How are they going to get out of it? And then the start of the next episode is a really cheap get out of jail free card to then finish the story. And
Right.
that's kind of what the Flash Gordon stuff did. They always put the cliffhanger there, and they had the narrator or whatever sum up, oh, one last we saw our hero, blah, blah, blah. So I think it's going to be like that, but this being the method for the new format for the new Star Wars, they're not going to have the opening crawl or narration, I don't think. It'll just be, here's the series, go right into it. And they'll have the recap thing, but most people skip that.
Yeah, I just had a kind of funky image when you mentioned the Adam West Batman of seeing like Diego Luna and Stan Skarsgård in a kind of Harrison and Sean Connery type situation in some kind of imperial castle with a rotating fireplace.
Okay, I don't care how cheesy it would make the series. I would pay money to see Diego Luna and Skarsgård like scaling the side of a building and like talking to the people in the window. No, that would ruin it. I don't
like Tom Cruise in the 4th Mission Impossible, climbing the side of the Burj Khalifa. We'll do that with Stellan, and we're having to break through the glass to talk to the people inside.
Oh my, that would be ridiculous. But
although it's the fact that they're going with this kind of very spy espionage type way you're describing it makes me think that maybe there will be some kind of a physical stunt that could be Mission Impossible-esque, or kind of reminding us of moments from maybe like the Bond series or the Bourne series. The fact that you've got some of the creators involved from the Bourne trilogy make it seem like that could very well be some of the inspiration behind some kind of set pieces. But
we've already seen, and let's talk about if we enjoyed this or not. We've seen in the scene that they released, they're hanging out, and they for whatever no reason that we know yet are meeting in like a space transmission shop or something. That you've got all of these extremely heavy things for no apparent reason, hung from the ceiling. And what happens is, oh, we shoot the chains and there's things dropping and swinging, and they've created action from the set piece itself is created a lot of the action. And why that is what that is that gonna be we have to do crazy ridiculous things to replace the fact that we don't have lightsabers? I don't know. Is that good? Is that bad? Is that and I'll go ahead and say, for me, that took me out of it a little bit. Okay, is the swinging chains and the heavy things dropping. If it had just been one or two or a cut, like to begin with, to show the battle with the Imperials, okay, fine. But when it got to be, switching to a wide shot and there's hundreds of the things and it's constant swinging and moving and going, that got a little bit kind of, that was too much for me for that. But what are y'all's thoughts?
Yeah.
It was. I think I know what you're saying. I had that kind of feeling as well. Like there's a lot going on here, and also when's the scene gonna end? And also because it reminded me a little bit of that kind of cliche, like underground, mine cart scene. Try not to mention like pot, but almost like the way it was lit almost reminded me a little bit of in Temple of Doom. And the fact that you had kind of two characters having a discussion that gets kind of interrupted by just things hanging around and flying about reminded me a little of the beginning of Pirates of the Caribbean when Johnny Depp and Orlando Bloom are facing off in that kind of little cabin. And I was thinking that what Rogue One did really well is it stayed with this kind of even tone that didn't kind of flip-flop too heavily between genres, which is something that Star Wars kind of might have, I think we could all say, struggled a little bit in some of the films to maintain a kind of balanced feeling and tone, which is why you've got that old cliche of what is that feeling of Star Wars, and Rogue One really felt Star Wars. And how much does the Andor series have to follow that kind of balance of tone from Rogue One? Is that what's going to make it still feel Star Wars and still feel in that sweet spot to us? And I'm hoping it does. I think that Rogue One did really well by kind of stripping away the kind of more cheesiness and goofiness of Star Wars, while maintaining like little pockets of humor here and there that wasn't spread too far around the large number of characters they had. And that's one thing that I think would be interesting to see in terms of like tone. Do they keep it feeling in that sort of Rogue One theme and kind of central, very neutral tone that feels very our world and lived in? Or do they, because they've got a lot of episodes and a lot of screen time, and although Andor was really nicely figureheaded in that poster you showed us, Catherine, there's still quite a few other cast members that they're going to have like comic relief and things like that, which I'm hoping they don't go with, because Rogue One to me struck that balance really well. It was, despite being dark in storyline and what happens to the characters, it still felt like a fun adventure that took us on a ride through the duration of the film. And so whether the overall series tries to do that or they try and tackle that episodically is a mystery to me. But I think that the more kind of straight and narrow storyline of the Rebels, and how you can go from this kind of street dwelling thief to somebody who's willing to sacrifice everything later on, 5 years later in Rogue One, is the focus of the series. And I think if they keep the eye on that ball, then it'll be a hit for many of us, I think.
Yeah, that the way that scene plays out with Stellan Cassian. I really like the dialogue going back and forth, but like you said, David, when all that stuff starts randomly happening, changes, stuff falling, it does feel like a Flash Gordon type situation where there's not really much logic as to why that type of stuff starts happening. It just does. And it's like, okay, it's like, do we really need this much for this scene? I think we kind of get it. You have the troops breaking in. That's good enough, you know. So yeah, they're gonna, do silly stuff like that or whatnot. But at the same time, I think we're gonna get it balance that out, like you said, with good storytelling and a level of detail. Like even in the Mandalorian trailer, I was watching, they had like a extended close-up shot of the N1 starfighter that he's flying now, and you're seeing the level of detail on it, of how many pieces are broken off and stuff. I'm like, wow, that is really on point. And so I figure you apply that also to Rogue One, or not Rogue One, but the Cassian Andor series is going to feel much more real and lived in. It's not like there was always the running joke in the original trilogy that the Millennium Falcon's a chunk of junk, which is always falling apart.
Yeah.
But maybe the electrical system was falling apart, but you didn't see pieces of it falling off or literally missing like you saw in Mando's N1, or you see when they're Cassian and Stellan are meeting in this rundown, industrial facility where things are just falling in pieces on the roof. So, which conveniently doesn't start falling apart until the danger starts.
Well, I see. I think
West Batman.
Structural integrity.
I think it wasn't necessarily even that. I think like it was something maybe that they cut a section that we will see more of that scene. That that was
that's probably a rushed abridged edit for the purposes of the show. So. And
I was
the fact that they're premiering with 3 episodes. And it's funny because a lot of times I hear from people when it comes to long form television that it'll take about 3 episodes to decide whether they're hooked or not. So I think that if they had done it 1 episode a week for the first 3, people who aren't really sure about it might not come back because they're not going to remember if they didn't really. But if you put all 3 of them down at once, it's like, let's really reel them in. Sort of like how the Rings of Power dropped the first 2 episodes at the little theatrical premiere thing, and I haven't seen it, but people are saying, well, the first episode's all set up and really slow, and then it starts moving into the story. The second one's like, okay, so you're building up momentum. So I think they're probably going to be doing that, and I think that's more of a sign that this will be a long form TV show.
Yeah, I agree with that as well, and the fact that Rings of Power was smart to do that because it started slow. So you had to really but that's Tolkien too, because it's like 4,000 pages of what's happening.
That series is pure fan fiction because they didn't have the rights to anything that they're adapting.
Well, okay, I mean, they're still doing it in the style of Tolkien.
Yeah, I've heard their attempts at replicating Tolkien's dialogue is pretty cringy, but we'll find out.
Yeah,
check it out for fun.
If you haven't watched that, check that out. Check out Rings of Power to develop your own.
Maybe once the series is finished, I'll try Prime for a month to binge it or something.
But I just started assuming that when all the transmission shop stuff or all the heavy things started dropping from the ceiling, it appeared that either the Empire or Cassian or whatever, they were like purposely shooting the chains or something to create this kind of chain reaction and this somewhat semi-forced action, and that we just had to have stuff like that happen because we don't have big glowing space swords. We've got to force the blaster action. So next kind of topic is this was alluded to and mentioned, is like real world lived in kind of things. Is we talked about this a little bit when we watched this Thursday night when we watched this special. What are your thoughts on the costuming here? Is we get to see a lot more in this preview than we even saw in the trailers of the costuming and the way they're making the world look, the worlds, I guess, because I think we see more than one place and we can assume they're skipping from planet to planet. What are your thoughts on what we've seen so far in that?
I thought it was really good how there's a lot of variety and just aesthetics that we're being given. that there are, I think Star Wars has always had that visual interest and intrigue in designs of characters, and some of that comes down to just physically how they looked and dressed. When I was waiting for trying to take a look at the special look, and my Disney Plus was kind of hanging and buffering, I went back to see the what else was on the Star Wars channel on YouTube, and I revisited the sizzle reel, which they first released, I think, December 2020, so quite a while ago. And it's just like 90 seconds, but they have the camera kind of jump between different members of the crew, and it's all production designer, costume designer, and things that have a physical, real presence. And I think that's exactly what can give Star Wars look and feel a more tangible reaction, more tangible quality to us. When you've got emphasis on those physical aspects actually being made, the prop shop being in full use again at Pinewood, and also having like Neil Scanlon and people who did the VFX for the aliens as well, and different creatures that we've seen in the Star Wars films. They're putting the same level of detail and attention into a TV show, which I think is so far unprecedented, because parts of Obi-Wan looked and felt like they were very much a limited TV show with some constraints that you'd get on just like a network TV program, and rather than something that's really large scale and cinematic. And I think part of that is to do with the level of just intricacy they go behind in terms of getting groups of characters, whether they're different factions that will make up the Rebel Alliance, as we're alluding to, or whether they're just new individuals that are coming from different locations, having their own wardrobe, having their own kind of uniform in a way. And I think because it's very much in the middle of a Star War, this Andor series, having the uniforms be very discreet and different will just help, I think, anyone who's either uncertain about like what the kind of factions and the political situation behind the scenes of the Empire and the rebels coming up is. That can all be helped visually by having this kind of extra level of detail and attention in things like the costumes and so on. So yeah, to me, it all looks really good. I think it shows that there's an extra level of love and interest from people who are making this, which might have been missing before in other Star Wars material, but it felt evident here.
Yeah, to me, there's a lot of variety on display. A lot of it looks believable. It looks like we're going to be getting a glimpse of different cultures as well. And it seems like Stellan Skarsgård's wardrobe is as big as Queen Amidala's. The sheer amount of stuff just in that sizzle reel, I'm like, oh my god. Yeah, so and you see the classic stuff like stormtroopers and other rebel. So I think it's on point. And like you said, the Obi-Wan show had a lot of there's a uniformity because it's like stormtroopers and desert people, and and then Imperial cadets, and it's like that was about it. So this show looks like, because it looks like we're going to all sorts of different locations, then we're going to be seeing a much more lively side of the galaxy than we've seen before.
So I think the D plus preview or the IMAX preview, whichever way you saw it, alleviated a lot of my fears that this was going to be kind of a low budgety kind of thing, because in the sizzle reel that we saw, some of the thing, it was featured in this as well, is there's a guy just kind of standing there in just kind of green fatiguey looking things with an overwrap and essentially holding an AK-47 with a couple of extra knobs on it that made it a blaster. So we see him again, but we see a lot of other things that have more detail. We saw Skarsgård's character have more and more and more wardrobe. We've seen the really clean parts, and I think they're going to use costuming to show the differences. Is how clean and how bright it is in the scenes that we see Mon Mothma, and how more gritty Diego is because he's the kind of, stereotypical street rat kind of, thing, the rebel, and even how unkempt exactly he looks a little bit when you see him dressed as an Imperial officer. He's just a little kind of off of it. He's not quite he doesn't look as, imposing. We talked about in Rogue One where we get the commander, the Krennic uniform, which is just a bright white, and I've got a big old cape, and I'm fancy pants with the Jodhpur pants and everything. Is I think we'll see that stuff again, and I'm hoping that they're the ones that look more like just a traditional Earth costuming. There's a reason for that, and they're going to show us that, and maybe that's seen. I think the preview gave us more of that. Is like, okay, this is like just a band of people hanging out in the woods. They don't have the super fancy blasters. They don't have fancy costumes. This is this, and then you'll get this crew. Now, what really makes me question on this, and this is kind of a prediction, I don't know how much we're going to be able to see Cassian directly interact with Mon Mothma, because they just look like they're from completely different worlds. One would be completely out of place in the other. Is I don't remember or know, did we get, I don't think we got direct interaction between Cassian and Mon Mothma in Rogue One to where we saw if they knew each other.
Prediction number 3.
Ooh, go ahead.
Mon Mothma will be more in communication with Stellan Skarsgård, who I got the impression knows a lot more about the Rebel Alliance than Cassian, is higher ranking up there. And by the end of the series, Cassian will have achieved a level of clout that granted him an audience with Mon Mothma when they brought in Jyn Erso at the beginning of Rogue One. Because he certainly seems to be like, yes, he's caught their attention because he snuck in and stole whatever this thing is.
Right.
And it's like, oh, that's surprising. But you're right. I don't think he's going to be really paired with them. I think Mon Mothma is probably going to be calling the shots behind the scenes, like M to Bond, so to speak. And that more towards the end of the series, he'll be able to meet her and she'll be like interested, like, oh, look at all you've done so far, because she's clearly one of the top dogs of the Rebel Alliance at this point. So I think it'll be, so I doubt that, random Rebel scrappies would be brought in to see her all the time. So I think he's going to ascend to that throughout the series. Like prove his worth.
All right, let me ask for prediction number 4 while we're talking about that. What's the box?
My first thought when I looked at it is it reminded me of Darth Vader's chest piece thing. Mm-hmm. I'm like, is that something that has to do with that type of technology? But then I looked at it some more. I'm like, no, it's too thick. I was like, I don't know what it is. Is it a bomb? Can you use it to hack into Star Destroyers' computers and send them off course? I don't know.
Geo? Yeah, is it a schematic of some sort, like a 3D playout that kind of unfolds? I have no idea, but I think that's part of the fun here, right? Is the less we know and the more kind of mystery we have, then sometimes the better. And I think one area that Andor could succeed where other Star Wars shows have struggled is, and this is almost going to sound completely counterintuitive to how we started this talk, but because we've got clusters potentially of different groups that want to rebel in their own way, that could lead to this unification, as Catherine predicted, I think is a really neat idea to structure the show. And the fact that we know we've got 12 episodes in season 1 and a season 2 guaranteed over this course of 5 years leading up to the Rogue One film and Star Wars kicking off, means that you've got a chance for character growth for a couple of people, not just Andor. And I don't think it would be necessarily immediately a problem if we did have kind of side storylines, B and C and D storylines and characters showing their kind of, maybe not necessarily an origin story for them, because this is still Andor's, beginning, but having them having like detailed scenes introducing them and bringing them into the story, where when you've got a show that's just titled Obi-Wan or Boba Fett as the headline, because they are such heavy legacy characters, I think there's a lot more expectation that's brought into that from just hearing the series title, knowing that it's just the character name. Whereas because Andor is a newer invention in relative timeline terms, I think he's a good anchor to set the series on as the beginnings of the Rebel Alliance, and seeing it play out in parallel strands, whether it's in the kind of gritty street urchin that kind of finds his way on the up, and then climbing the ranks within what becomes a Rebel Alliance, or seeing the political side with Mon Mothma. Having storylines in parallel here and jumping around a bit could work well for this show, whereas it kind of shot itself in the foot when we looked at it when the Book of Boba Fett and Obi-Wan to an extent. So I think that's where the longer format of number of episodes and the kind of wider scale and scope mean this series has more area to kind of breathe, and more room to kind of grow. And I think that's if it's a setup, they've also announced for the season 2, there's going to be another 12 episodes, with potential 3-episode character arcs. I came across that, I think it was the Hollywood Reporter was saying that that Gilroy was saying that they initially had storylines to go up for 5 years, covering from where we are to Rogue One itself, but they decided that looking at how it's going to fit into the longer series format, they could do arcs over 3 episodes in the second season that then have time jumps between, and I think that kind of portrays how this will have a grander scale and scope that we can see, but also if you do have a lot more characters, it won't necessarily be to the detriment of the series overall, and it could work nicely.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with saying I don't know that it matters what the box is. It's the Maltese Falcon, it's the MacGuffin, it's the whatever it is, and I don't know if it matters if we even ever know what it. Who cares if they tell us what it is or not? It is what got Skarsgård's attention drawn to Cassian. He has this thing. He was able to do this thing that other people cannot do and get inside the Empire. I mean, in my mind, in my head canon, whether they tell us or not, it makes the most sense that it's some kind of Death Star tech. That's the big thing looming on the horizon. What rebel cells are bound to start getting whispers of that there's got to be millions and millions of people in the galaxy that are being drawn in to produce this ultimate weapon. It makes the most sense for it to be that, but then again, it doesn't make the most sense for it to be that and it be this big. Like you were saying, it's too big a little bit to be Vader's chess box, but it's way too small to be an integral part of the Death Star. But they could come up with some sort of science fiction-y thing that says that it is.
Prediction number 5.
Ooh.
They're going to continue to tie in Palpatine's cloning project in some way, and that might have something to do with that.
That's a good thing, because that has been the goal of, I mean, they've given hints in just about everything to the explanation of Grogu and his potential come to being, and how that relates to somehow Palpatine returned.
and Dr. Pershing's science project and what Moff Gideon's been up to, and it's all leading to that on Exegol. And as we know from the dictionaries, Palpatine's been aware of Exegol since he assumed control of the galaxy in the Revenge of the Sith timeline. So this could have something to do with that, because with Rogue One, they didn't even discover the Death Star was a thing until that movie. So to have this box be another Death Star thing, it's like, well, you can't have them solve that mystery in the course of the show because of Rogue One. You could, and they don't bring up this box again in Rogue One, so it would be odd to put all this emphasis on the box, and then you never get a resolution to that. But I tend to agree more with what you said, David, that it's just the MacGuffin that's there to get these two characters to meet. And it's not so much about what he stole, but about the fact that he was able to steal it at all. And it clearly looks like something high tech that it would be very hard to get your hands on. And that's the real appeal, because Stellan's not, he recognizes it. He says, where'd you get that? But he's more impressed about how he was able to get it. Right. And that's going to be, okay. And that's when he starts, reeling him in to join his little merry band of rebels.
Yeah, the fact that he was willing to put himself out for something that looks kind of nondescript means that he's like a quick on the recruitment. Hey, come join us. You got fast hands.
So let's ask for prediction number 6. Are we going to see, is Ian going to be a surprise in this? Are we going to see Palpatine?
Yeah, why not? I mean, he popped up in the Kenobi show. I mean, they could. Then again, I still don't think Vader's going to show up. I don't think the Jedi are going to show up unless it's like some random runaway, fugitive Jedi or whatever. But I mean, he could, if it depends, because we don't know yet who the big bad is on the Empire side of things, who's going to be representing, like who's going to be the Krennic, so to speak, of this series. We don't know yet. So you might have an audience with him. I don't think Lucasfilm is going to go the Tarkin route again. They kind of did that with Rise of Skywalker for Leia, but I that was a little different. Whereas resurrecting somebody who'd been dead for nearly 22 years, I don't think they're going to do that again. So they might bring Paul Palpatine back just to pay lip service to the fact that, hey, this is the head honcho. But that's kind of 50-50 at this point. If he does, I think it would maybe just be a cameo.
Yeah, I'm thinking that if we see Palpatine in this, we may need to see Palpatine in this, at least peripherally, to show how Mon Mothma is still within the Imperial Senate. If she's in the Imperial Senate and she's a bigwig in this and just subtly starting the Rebel Alliance and those factions underneath it, you kind of need to see who's in charge of the Imperial Senate. And, does she have a confrontational scene with Palpatine just for like hours? And you wouldn't have to see Vader there, because Palpatine's not going to bring his enforcer to the Senate while he's still trying to, I'm just the Emperor, I'm not the Sith Lord, So I think that they're probably holding him as a surprise, like they like to hold him as a surprise. And when everybody gets to see, ooh, it's Ian. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's most likely going to be a cameo either at the very beginning or very end, like a table setting of things. Although your idea of a confrontation between Mon Mothma and Palpatine does sound good. It'd be good to have like that kind of character clash. But I think something towards the end of season, after whatever a big epic machinations have been going on for these 12 episodes come to a close, and how it maybe comes to the attention of the Empire in a more central way towards the end of this season, and that kind of raises the scale for the season 2, and how they've got to bring even more people in to the Rebel Alliance just purely to get numbers up. Now the Empire's central gears have started to turn, and see there's this rising coming.
Question, is Bail Organa in this series?
Yes, we've seen Jimmy Smits in one of the sizzles or something, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Am I wrong? I think
he's
so.
A bigwig as well, so that you could see some of that. Yeah.
I think we're for sure gonna see Bale and what they've talked about a lot on Rebels Revisited. And if you're watching this and more interested, I think I don't know if their prediction, they're doing a wedge show tomorrow, but there will be between now and before Andor premieres, the Rebels Revisited crew will be doing their Andor preview and prediction show. And they've, looked a lot at Bail and Mon Mothma and how they appear in Star Wars Rebels. And I say that you're going to have to see a Mon Mothma Palpatine confrontation because of her arc in Rebels, and what you see is where she transitions from someone who is literally within the Imperial Senate and just a voice against what's going on to the de facto leader of the all rebellion cells is I think to really use that character in this, we're gonna have to see that transition. And whether we see that in season 1 or season 2, I don't know yet, but I would hope season 1. Because season 2 is so close to Rogue One, and we see what you had mentioned earlier, Catherine, that all the rebel cells are together and there, and she's the leader. So how did we get there? So I think we're going to see that. So we are at about that time. So let's go with we've had a number of predictions so far. So let's go with like wrap-ups and final big predictions for what we're going to see for the show, because in our next episode when we're back, we are scheduled to talk about the first 2 or 3 episodes that we've seen of Andor and how potentially wrong that we are. So go with shoot your big shot and tell us what your predictions are for Andor. Who wants to go first? Gio?
I tend to, now with Star Wars, it's fun to predict, but I try and limit like how much I think is going to go on, so that there's some element of kind of surprise, and that your expectations are, however different it is, what you see on screen, it doesn't kind of jar with what you had in your head canon wanting to see happen. But I'm hoping that we just get more of the Rogue One theme and feel, that we are in a Star War, but there's this kind of low-key, close to the ground espionage action coming along, and it simmers along for a few episodes, and then every so often just kind of pops off and we get a bit of spectacle and action. And through the season, we just expand the cast of characters, and maybe Cassian does kind of start collecting his action figures of the Rebel Alliance as he goes through the season, and comes to a meeting with more familiar characters in person, like Saw, later on in the season. So I'm hoping that we get lots of fresh new stuff early on, and then we bring in the more familiarity in terms of established characters towards the end of season 1. That's
Okay.
what
So
I'd like to see.
what I think we're going to get in at least first 3 episodes is we're going to get the flashback. We're going to get the, what brought Cassian to where he is right now, that, why is he, what is his motivation for sneaking into the Imperial installations, or wherever he's sneaking into to get whatever he's getting. Why is he doing that? What brought him to that? I think we're going to get that. I think we're going to get some, whether it's with Cassian or completely a separate storyline going on, I think we're going to get a separate Mon Mothma storyline, because I think they're really going to push that character, and I think she is going to be the second main character in this show. And I think they'll probably go on separate paths for a while. Is we're going to get what she's doing, what he's doing, and where that's going into where that intersects. And I'm going to go ahead and say, here's my big prediction. We're going to get something they have not showed us yet, a surprise, a guest, a character that they're going to bring in that's going to make us go, whoa, in the first 3 episodes. They're going to do that. Who that is, what that is, I don't think it's going to be Saw. I don't think it's going to be Bale. I think it's going to be something completely out of left field that they are purposely not showing us.
I think it's going to be an espionage type show, a la 3 Days of the Condor, and that it will be awesome compared to the other live action Star Wars shows. I've run down my predictions so far, but yeah, I think you're right. They're probably throwing a kid. I think the fact that they're premiering with 3 episodes, not just to hook people, but I predicted just like the ending of the first 3 episodes of The Mandalorian ended on the. Well, actually, it wasn't. Never mind. That was the first episode that ended with that. So maybe the 3rd episode of Andor will end with some type of bombshell that will get people to hook into it.
I think we're gonna get that Baby Yoda moment. I think they're looking to recreate that kind of lightning in the bottle, and after 2 series that have kind of been meh, that they got to do something to go, and that's why I think that we're gonna get.
Is it bad that I can't remember the first of those 2 series? I remember Kenobi. I don't remember the one before that.
Book of Boba Fett is the other meh.
That explains it. And no, that wasn't a joke. I genuinely forgot for it. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, I mean, after the meh and the meh is, I'm hoping even, and I don't know. Well, I don't know if I hope this is good or not. That this may have been the pushback and the delay, is that because the delay was announced right around Obi-Wan drop, or whenever people were not as overly impressed, as maybe they went back and did some re-editing, did some reshooting, did something to do it. And hopefully that will be a good thing and not we've got to throw somehow Palpatine return directly into this because they're going meh over this. But I'm excited. I think it looks amazing. It visually, it does the dialogue and the content that they decided to release for us on at Rogue One and on D Plus Day. It all looks really good. It all looks really good. Don't screw this up, please. Oh. Anyway, I think that's it. Any final thoughts, anybody?
That's it.
Yeah. Actually, one thing that's just come to mind is the teaser trailer, I think, started with a kind of town bell being rung, like it was in the kind of early war siren. So perhaps that's like the opening shots of Andor. There's the Empire coming to kind of raise to the ground an entire city or planet, which is completely unprepared for it, and that's where we get young Andor wanting to immediately have his kind of motivation set up. So I won't be surprised if we do have a young Cassian Andor character for not just a flashback, but for a little longer than we might expect. Because it just does seem like there's not going to be a Disney Star Wars show without a young child actor having some kind of prominent role, or a character that is youngish. Whether it's, I mean, Baby Yoda's not really young, but Grogu's young for his species, I guess. But yeah, it just looks really good, and let's hope we see some of that Star Wars Rogue One feeling that we loved captured again in the series.
Well, friends watching, join us again in 2 weeks to see how right, how wrong, or how completely different things are from what we've predicted today. Join our friends over on Rebels Revisited tomorrow night. Monday night, and for their, like I said, I think it's a Wedge Antilles show and his roles in Rebels, and join them again the following Monday, and join next Sunday, join right here at this same time for another episode of the Jedi Archives. I'm not sure exactly what they will be reviewing then, but join us all. See us. Come out on Tuesdays to the Cantina, and this Thursday's watch along, we will be watching along Rogue One, getting us ready and set for that. So, and that's going to be a special episode, not just, me and Spencer and Jeff, not just the usual suspects watching. We're going to invite the hosts from Rebels Revisited out as well, because they actually know things and just don't make crap up like we do. Until then, everybody.
Hey, we're better than that.
No, I wasn't saying us here. No, I was saying
we're better because we don't need to break news to get people to watch our show.
There you go. But yes, Jeff, Spencer, and I, we readily admit that we just make crap up off our research or ask the questions and wait for somebody in the chat. Whereas, but here we full well know that at least you two actually know things. Well, I can ask a question, and Catherine's just gonna reach to the bookshelf behind us and go, in this book on this page or in this movie at minute 371, that's what happened. So, but anyway, until next time, friends, may the Force be with you.
Thanks. May the Force be with you all.
The Force be with you all.